Hi,
So, what is your name?
Eric Nelson.
Eric Nelson. And where do you attend lodge?
I attend lodge in Cheyenne, Wyoming at Western Star Lodge number 6. I am a past master of that lodge, and I'm also the Right Worshipful Grand Lecturer for the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Colorado, Wyoming, and Utah.
All right, let's start off with, what does Masonry mean to you?
What does Masonry means to me? I would say the in-depth of knowledge, wisdom, learning how to better improve oneself. For me, it means being a better man, being a better father, being a better husband, being a better educator, just being better at anything that I choose to endeavor in.
And what was it that inspired you to join Masonry?
I would say watching men in the community, their volunteerism, being a kid, not knowing, what Freemasonry was. I watched my father. And later I found out he was a 33rd degree Mason and didn't know what that meant or was. But just watching him being involved in community activities, feeding the homeless, doing clothing drives, providing water and shelter to people in need. It was a lot of those things that I was like, wow, that seems very interesting. And my dad was just so compassionate about it. And I always wondered why he would come home in a black suit. And I was just so curious.
Was your father the first Mason in your family?
No, it's actually a long lineage, Freemason and Eastern Stars. My mom was the Eastern Star as well. Never understood it back then, but learned all about it later on in life when I became a member.
Do you participate with Eastern Star at all?
I do. I currently sit as the associate patron of my chapter, Wyoming chapter number 6 up in Cheyenne. And my wife is the worthy matron.
And I'm glad that you're here then, because you're the first person that's had a chance to talk about Eastern Star.
Okay.
What can you tell me, or somebody who's looking at getting involved in Masonry and seeing all of these, hearing about all these different bodies, what can you tell us about Eastern Star?
I would say for Eastern Star, for which is the female side of the fraternity, just about every house or appendant body within Freemasonry has almost a female side to it. Within the Order of the Eastern Stars, it's such a beautiful side. It talks about, the involvement that the females was doing back in the ages or what have you, all the way into present day. So with just about everything we do as Freemasons, the Eastern Stars do a lot of similarities with volunteering in community, giving back during charitable events, and just learning more about the wisdom and the sciences of the order.
And speaking of those community things, what are some examples that come to mind of things that you've seen personally of Masonry helping your own local community?
I would say personally, watching it growing up, and then personally getting involved within the fraternity, doing clothing drives, feeding the homeless, raising money for our youth, providing them with scholarships. Oftentimes you have a lot of families out there that are unable to afford putting their children through college. And I've personally seen the fraternity within Masonry and Shrindom provide scholarships for youth.
Are you involved in any other appendant bodies?
Most of them, yes, I am. Just about all of them.
Can you give a brief rundown, just like a little bit of information about what bodies you are involved with and how they differ from traditional or regular Freemasonry?
I would say starting with the Blue Lodge, of course, you learn the foundation principle within the first 3 degrees, and it's upon one to seek additional and more knowledge by going either the York Rite side of Freemasonry or the Scottish Rite side of Freemasonry. And I was told if I was more into the studies or the history or the religious side of Freemasonry, even though Freemasonry is not a religion, then I should go York Rite, because it gets deeper into the Holy Bible or the Book of Law. And when I became a Holy Royal Arc Mason, I learned just about how the first 3 degrees was put together. Everything that I went through was made understood in the Holy Royal Arc. And then when I joined the Royal and Select Masons, for which that's cryptid Masons, we call it the Purple House, I learned just about how everything was put together and what I went through in the Holy Royal Arc. And then when I became a Knights Templar, everything just came together and made sense, within those previous houses or what have you. And I would say in being a certain knight, it really kind of opened my eyes up more to the Christian faith. Learned about the Crusaders and, how they was the defenders of Christ and what have you. And they started the banking system that we have today. And I just thought it was such
Right, the Templars.
Yeah, I thought it was such an honor to be a part of, an organization like that.
I thought it was fascinating to learn how that started with them so that pilgrims going to the Holy Land, they were getting robbed constantly. Right. And by depositing their money with the Templars in their starting location and picking it up when they arrived, there was a lot less incentive to be robbing pilgrims.
Exactly. Exactly. And just being there to defend them, it just meant so much. And now when you look at Scottish Rite, it's like getting masonry fed to you out of a fire hose, and we call it's the university side of Freemasonry. You learn just about everything, same stuff in New York, right? But it's much faster on the Scottish Rite side, much more recognizable, as they say.
One thing that I noticed in my journey through Scottish Rite was that it seemed to be a lot more about philosophy rather than the spiritual and religion side of things.
Exactly. And as you well know, when it comes to Shrindom, even though it's not Masonry because they recruit Masons, it's more so of the fun side of Masonry, where you kind of let your hair down or what have you. Everything is just fun, happy-go-lucky, but you're doing all of the same work as we as Masons do with charitable and giving back to the community, providing scholarships for our youth, mentoring our youth is a big part of it. And of course, you know about the Shriners Hospitals, where they provide free services for those who are in need.
For years, I have gotten these little coupons for some circus that's done here in Colorado. And I've always been like, oh, a circus. That would be fun to take the kids. Never gotten around to it. And it wasn't until at the beginning of this year, I found one of those coupons and I looked at it and saw that it's actually put on by the Shriners.
Yeah. It's a beautiful thing.
And I actually know one of the brothers that I attend lodge with. He's one of the clowns for the Shriners. Right. And they'll go to children's hospitals and put on shows for the kids there.
Yeah. Because when you really look at that, it's really digging deeper into the heart. You're dealing with people who are going through phases within their life. And just for a brother or a sister, for which we call them daughters in Shrine, to go there to provide some type of peace, some type of happiness as they go through whatever they're dealing with, within their, infirmities or what have you. And if they so happen to be transitioning in life, you've brought a smile to that child's heart, and mind, to let them know that no matter where they're going to be okay. There are people out here that actually care about them. So that brings smiles to my heart when I hear about the clowns within the body of, Shrindom or what have you.
Is there any advice that you would give people about determining how or whether Freemasonry is right for them?
I would say for me, the abundance of knowledge, the abundance of principles that you learn within Masonry, it's a lot. And when I became a Mason, I realized it involved a lot of things that I was always and already doing in community. I just so happened to be connected with other brothers, sisters that were doing so much to help mankind advance. I would say for somebody coming in is be ready, take it at a slow pace, because within each house or appendic body in Freemasonry, there are their own dues, uniforms, and also the charitable work that they do within Masonry. So we learn as you become a Mason, excelling through the first 3 degrees, how to manage your 24-inch gauge, which is equivalent to 24 hours of a day. I would definitely say make sure that they know what they're getting into, to say, hey, I want to give back to community, but I need to pace myself, because based on what I'm getting involved in and being connected with this organization, it could be a lot.
It can be easy to get overwhelmed.
Yes.
And when I was at the Scottish Rite reunion, they were trying to get everybody to sign up for this committee, that committee, this thing, that thing. And I told one of the guys that was running the reunion, I said, you know, Barry, I heard that the actual lost word of Masonry is the word no.
Right.
Because it's very easy to want to strive to give everything that you can, and then suddenly realize that you are stretched too thin between Masonry, your work, your family.
Right. Very. You know, so I would definitely encourage whoever is getting involved is to be mindful of time.
Like in all things, moderation is the key.
Yes, indeed.
Are there any misconceptions about Masonry?
I would say the two biggest that just comes to mind would be, is Masonry a religion? And the other one, for which everybody always talks about, is there secrets within Masonry? And I'd start with the latter first. There are no secrets. You can Google anything you want to know about Masonry. It's just an open book. But just like any organization, you know, that you kind of learn the makeup of their organization once you become a part of it. Whereas somebody on the outside, when you get to talking about the organization, is like, what does that mean? What is that? Well, of course you don't know, because you're not a part of that organization. Masonry is no different. You know, there are certain ways we learn how to talk to each other and how to recognize each other. And, you know, that's one of the biggest misconceptions is Masonry is a secret. It's a cult. It's this, is that. It's not. You can Google whatever you want to know. Now, going to religion, I would say people are like, well, why is there a Bible, you know, within there? What are you guys practicing? We're not practicing anything. You know, when you look at Masonry is built on religious principles per se, and Masonry respects all members' faith, which is why on a gentleman's agreement, we don't talk about religion and politics. When we walk into a lodge, we leave that at the door. You know, those are two things that could easily divide people. Whereas we open up a lodge and we close a lodge based on a prayer. We're respecting everyone's faith, for which, as you also know, in order to become a Mason, you have to believe in a supreme architect. What do people normally reference that to? Well, God, because no atheist can be a Mason. Therefore, you have to believe in something, faith. So those are the two biggest misconceptions, I think, that people still grapple with to this day.
Can you explain what Prince Hall lodges are?
Yes. Short, sweet, going back to when Masonry came to the United States. Prince Hall was one of 13 that was Masons at the time, and they was only allowed to do and practice certain things within Masonry. And at that particular time, Prince Hall petitioned the Grand Lodge, the Mother Grand Lodge of England, to be chartered. And so that way they can be able to practice Masonry just as their other fellow Caucasian brothers was able to practice Masonry. Because when you really break it down and look at it, there is no division within Masonry back in England or Europe. That only happened here in the United States. And the Grand Lodge granted that charter, and at that point, that's when all of those members was able to form their lodges and their Grand Lodges, for which now we have to this day. It's referenced Prince Hall because he initiated the process.
And previously, before that in the United States, full-fledged Masonry was pretty much reserved for Caucasians.
Yes.
So I attended the Prince Hall Lodge in Colorado Springs, and honestly, I expected to be the only Caucasian person there.
Right.
And to my surprise, not only was there another Caucasian person, but he was also a Jewish brother.
Right.
And
Right.
and so I found that to be, kind of amusing in how you meet and encounter just the most diverse group of people in places that you would not expect.
Exactly. And the way I've always seen it is Freemasonry for me is about light and knowledge, seeking more light, seeking more wisdom. And it's not about the race or the color of your skin, for which, as Masonry hasn't evolved in the United States, you have a lot of Caucasian brothers that are a part of Prince Hall lodges and vice versa. You have African-American members that are a part of the Caucasian lodges, more commonly referenced as four-letter lodges. And people say, well, what's the difference? Well, it's ancient, free, and accepted. When you really break it down and start traveling and moving around, even that really don't hold a significance, because you have majority grand lodges that are three-letter, free and accepted. So at the end of the day, you look at, here's what it was when it was accepted here in the United States, and here's what it is now. It's a brotherhood that both black and white of all different faiths and sects come together to do good work in the community, to learn how to improve themselves, to be better men at the end of the day.
It's all about, what are you most comfortable with, and not just Prince Hall lodges in general,
Right.
but this Prince Hall lodge versus this Prince Hall lodge. One might be a more comfortable setting where you can really dig into that brotherhood and bond with those brothers there, rather than another particular location, because Masonry at its core is made up of individuals.
Exactly. I would definitely question and ask that member or potential candidate, what's your reason? Why are you joining? Why would you, or why do you want to join? Because you don't join based on the color of the room. For me, you join based on what you're learning, what you're being taught. Why are you here? For which, when you get to travel and see and talk to many different brothers, everybody joined for their own reason. And in my conversations and research, when I've traveled, it always boiled right back down to one common thing. I joined because of the work being employed in the community. I wanted to give back to society. It wasn't about that brother's color. It wasn't about this person's faith. It was about the work being employed into community. And that just fills my cup every time.
Now, did your wife get involved in Eastern Star through you, or did you meet her?
Yes, through me. She's so active in all of this stuff, and I'm like, yeah, they have stuff for women as well. And she's like, well, how do I get involved? I want to be able to give back, to community or what have you. And, at that point in time, I took her through the process and, connected her with some of the sisters. And matter of fact, we both became Eastern Stars together. I thought it was just a very, very good time in my life.
Have you ever been involved with any of the youth groups?
I have Demolays, also the Knights of Pythagoras. I was fortunate enough to be the Colorado State Director for our area. And oh my gosh, over the years and still current to this day, we are doing so much when it comes to mentoring our youth, teaching them skill building, skills within life or what have you, learning how to tie a tie, how to dress for interviews, how to be prepared, study techniques to help them get through school, when it comes to their homework, and preparing them for college. It's just been overwhelmingly beautiful, a beautiful experience or what have you.
Yeah, my daughter is involved in Rainbow Girls.
Nice. Yes, beautiful organization. I encourage a lot of brothers and sisters to get more involved with the different appendant bodies within Freemasonry, because starting with our youth is mentorship, right? Mentorship is essential. It's essential to teach them organizational skills. It's essential to teach them different ways of how to manage, their life at a young age. Why? Because as these youth grow up, what's the next step? What's the next door? Freemasonry or the Order of Eastern Star. And they're learning and being able to be surrounded by people that are helping them grow in life, to become better human beings, to become better citizens, better wives, better husbands, all over the place. Now, as it relates when it comes to mentorship within the body itself, you have a lot of people or brothers and sisters that are in the organization that's like, well, what is this all about? I know we showed up, we have our meetings, we talk about, the things that we're doing in community, how much money we're raising, for this event, that event, how many clothes are we going to bring to the next meeting to give away or what have you. But what is this all about? What's the founding principles of Freemasonry? What are some of the sciences, the knowledge, the wisdom? You have brothers and sisters who dig deep to learn that information. I would encourage more mentorship to teach, educate, and train the younger members and even the older members. Because again, people join for different reasons. They come in, they get set, say, hey, we show up for this meeting, we do this, that, or a third. And before the day is over, I done forgot what this all entails. So I would definitely encourage, our senior brothers or those brothers that are well astute, that have, went down that path to say, I want to learn the progressive sciences of Freemasonry, because within that learning, you're learning how to improve upon various things within your life. Share that information more, with people coming in. I mean, we have lecturers, we have lectures and lodges, but it always seems like it's not enough time, within the day to get all of that in, because a lot of the times when you meet, it's in the evening. You've already had a full day of work, so you're just about worn out. So when you get to these meetings, you want to get in, take care of the business, and off to the races. Then your day starts over. So I definitely encourage, more of that shared, not only within the meetings, but outside of the meetings, as we build our friendships, as we build our bonds, to talk about more of the history and the knowledge that Freemasonry, evolved from. That was a very long-winded answer, wasn't it?
It was just as long as it needed to be.
Right on.
Without talking about discussing the actual details of the events, what can you tell me about what your feelings and emotional state before, during, and after your initiation?
Wow, it was, to start with, a sense of peace, overwhelming gratitude, and just being very honored, to...
This is the after.
Yes.
How about the before?
Before, it was the experience, like, what is this? What is it about? Like, what am I getting into?
Were you apprehensive?
Very, very curious, because there's the hype, just like any fraternity and sorority. Everybody has their own way when people are, being initiated, what have you. And it's like, wow, this is very interesting, And when you think about it, and I didn't learn this until later on, you have Greek fraternities, college side and stuff, and you have Freemasonry. And there's always been this beef or battle or whatever to say, well, who was first? Well, it's Freemasonry. It's the oldest and it's the ancient fraternity. Everything else came after. Matter of fact, everything else came out of Freemason that created or started all these other organizations. But just hearing about what they experience in college and what I've experienced, because I'm not, a Greek member, and what I experienced as a Freemason, the excitement going into it, the rah-rah. And when I went through that in Freemason, it's like, wow, this is some real stuff. Nothing crazy, or there was no hazing or anything like that, but just the excitement, there is like, wow.
Did you ever watch The Simpsons?
I have.
Before my initiation, the only concept that I had of it was the parody that The Simpsons did of it with the Stonecutters episode where Homer joined the Stonecutters.
Yeah.
And they just paddled him a whole bunch.
Yes.
And thankfully, Freemasonry does not have paddling.
Exactly.
You know, I learned that there are no Greek fraternities in England.
Oh, wow.
That is an American development.
Right.
And so, obviously, Freemasonry came before Greek fraternities.
Right.
Because it's an American development.
Right.
And Freemasonry goes back so much further. Long before America.
Oh, big time. You know, people are like, well, how did these organizations start? Well, trace it back to Freemasonry. Who was those founders? Was they members of the craft? And when they do their research, they realize, oh, yeah, okay.
So a lot of people on the internet will claim that Freemasons are after world domination, that they're the Illuminati. And you and I both know that that is not the case.
Right.
It's a lot easier for people to seek out the fantastical and outrageous than the fact that it's a fraternity, which is decidedly less interesting. Right. But if world domination is not the ultimate goal of Freemasonry, what is?
That's a great question. And I tell people it's not odd that they would term Freemasonry or members, you know, to say it's world domination, because people fear what they don't know or understand. And I would encourage, you know, those conspiracy theorists to dig more deep than just on the surface of what they can find or discover, and really look into it more to say, if this was world domination, where are those people? What have that organization, because Freemasonry is an organization, it's a fraternity, it's a brotherhood. What have they dominated? And who has it benefited? Because when I look around, I see brothers of all different faiths. I see brothers of all different crafts and skill sets, from the janitor to politicians, you know, to CEOs, entrepreneurs. I see them of everything, and we all have our same challenges in life. And they're brothers at the end of the day. So what have we dominated? Nothing, in my opinion.
When I think about the ultimate goal of Freemasonry, I think about the rough ashlar and the perfect ashlar.
Right.
Because when a candidate joins Masonry, what is Masonry's only real goal for that candidate?
Right. Right.
It's to help us to continually strive to improve.
Exactly.
And become the best men that we can be.
Exactly. We're coming better at who we are. Masonry, I would say, is discovering oneself. You can discover yourself in any other different, you know, field in life, but when you come into Freemasonry, there is so many different things taught within the allegories, within the different principles, that really opens your mind up to like, wow, I never would have thought about this, or I never would have went down that path or stumbled across this, and I only found it within this brotherhood. And based on some of those principles and based on some of those morals that I've learned, I've become, you know, not only a better person, but I've become, you know, a better husband. If I was struggling in my work, I've become a better manager, a better worker, a better serviceman. You know, I've just become overall better just by learning these principles to say you have the perfect and you have the rough. Ashwood. I mean, it's just so much knowledge, you know. And I've always told but other members, is that you can really never learn everything in Freemasonry because it's so much in one lifetime. There is just so much knowledge. You can never learn it all. You're always learning every day, every year, and on afterwards.
So if somebody is interested in joining Freemasonry, what should their first steps be?
First step would be to find a member and ask. To be one, ask one. Because this is of your own free will and accord. Masonry, we don't recruit.
And if they don't know one personally, how can they find one to ask?
A simple Google search. They can find any lodge in terms of within their specific area. And I'm pretty sure that if they think long enough and hard enough and pay attention to some of the people that are around them, they'll realize that that's a brother there just by looking at some of the things they've done within community that they never would have thought to ask. Are you a Freemason? I've seen you do this. Another more common visible way is the square and compass, that we would wear. Back in the historical days, it wasn't really promoted, but in today's time it is.
And in seeking out a lodge, what words of caution can you give people about irregular or clandestine lodges?
Word of caution would be, because nobody knows until they become a Mason, what are the differences. I would encourage them to go with what they see more common when they do their research and, looking on Google to find different Grand Lodges or what have you, and seek out and talk with some of those members, because again, they don't know what they don't know. And at that particular time, I would have hoped that they would have made the best and the right decision to join Masonry that comes out of the Mother Grand Lodge of England. So I would definitely go back and say, well, I would start there. Everything came out of England, and if it wasn't initiated there, then they would be a part of something that's irregular.
I've heard stories of people that have joined organizations that claim to be Masonic lodges.
Right.
And, only to find out, and they're paying insane dues amounts and going through, physically abusive hazing.
Right.
And I recall a story about this young man who was a member of this lodge for like 3 years before he finally discovered that it was not linked to any Grand Lodge of any type.
Right.
And he was really heartbroken because he invested 3 years of his life and a lot of money into this basically a fraudulent organization. There was one guy who was running like 8 of these fake lodges across 2 or 3 states,
right,
and just profiting from it. But the members, as far as they knew, it was real Masonry.
Right.
And I think I saw that on a podcast. I don't know if it was the Masonic Roundtable or one of those, but I just wanted to work into that, when we talk about Googling Masonic lodges, just to make sure that people do their homework on the lodge that they approach and make sure that it's, actually tied to a real Grand Lodge of some sort, whether it be AF&AM, F&AM, or Prince Hall.
Exactly.
Of course, if they're in Europe, or it'd be the United Grand Lodge of England.
Right. Going back, to where you were saying, one have to be careful. As you know, when we come into Freemasonry, one of the first things we learn is caution. What are the biggest things we learn? Again, another principle in life, you're being taught to become a better person, so you just don't rush into something hastily. Many people do and join different organizations or even create their own for their own reasons. And it's quite easy for somebody to join a Masonic order that's not even recognized by the Grand Lodge of England. Why? Because these may be members that just may want to venture out and do their own thing and didn't want to follow the rules of the organization itself. So you get quite a few members that are like-minded and agree on that same thought, and they just go create their own. It's no different than, people going creating and starting their own church. If it's something they don't like here and they got enough people, then they go out and they start their own. Freemasonry is an organization that is no different. When you have other people going out there creating their own bodies and lodges or what have you. So I would definitely go back to say it would be unfortunate because in Freemasonry we don't haze, And, we don't have outrageous dues. Things are reasonable. The members of that lodge, they formulate how much they are going to pay for their dues. So I would definitely highly encourage that person to really investigate, really do their homework, as you reference, and knowing what they're getting into, because it's a lot out there. It's a lot of cons. It's a lot of fraudulent organizations out there that come under the appearance and the guise of Freemasonry or whatever to start their own stuff. So it's so unfortunate to hear somebody would spend 3 years, let alone 3 months, let alone 3 days, let alone 3 hours, because that's time you can never get back. That's pain that you can never get undone, just to find out that it was not recognized or not legit.
Well, if you have any parting words, this is your chance for it. I know we've covered a lot.
Yes, it's been a plum-pleasing pleasure to sit here today and share my experiences. And for members out there who want to become a part of the order, going back to becoming a part of this order is, in order to be one, you have to ask one. Be mindful of your reasonings of why would you want to become a member of this order, because it's not an easy order to even get into. Freemasonry is very selective of who they bring into this organization. And at the same time, again, be mindful of why do you want to join this organization, because it requires not only time, but it requires money. It requires dedication. It requires commitment and effort of giving back to community, because you're becoming a part of such a prestigious organization to where you're standing alongside other members that are in it for some of the same similar reasons that you would want to join. And nobody wants to waste their time. Nobody wants to find out that this person joined this organization for other reasons, anything other than giving back to community. Because some people join for the perks, some people join for the favors, and you have other people that join for more genuine reasons to say, I want to improve upon myself. I want to do better. I want to help, aid, and assist those who are without. So I encourage those brothers to please come forth and ask. You will definitely learn more, and you would definitely be added, if accepted, to this body or to this brotherhood of men doing great things.
Well, Brother Nelson, thank you so much for taking the time to come down here. I know it was a long drive, and now you've got a long one back. So please drive safely.
Amen. Thank you. This was good.